dancing on falling land, cryo-cultural infrastructures on thawing permafrost. The Sakha Republic sits atop continuous permafrost. Its thaw risks releasing billions of tons of methane and CO2 into the warming atmosphere. This project seeks to make two distinct local festival traditions operative in subverting the hegemonic technopolitical mechanisms for understanding, managing, and negotiating the stewardship of the region's unique soilscape. The Osohai is a circle dance ritual originally performed at the Isar, an annual celebration of Sakha horse herders' arrival to summer pastures. It evolved in alases, or meadows around Thermocast lakes in the taiga forest. This subarctic landform is the biocultural cradle of the Sakha people, whose ancestors found refuge there from Mongolian conquests on their native steppe. Alases form an ancient permafrost thaw depressions, unable to sustain large trees which rely on frozen soil to trap moisture close to their shallow roots. The resultant clearings accumulate meltwater and precipitation, filling and drying cyclically for centuries, gradually forming a richly stratified soil, sprouting varied grasses. Serge, or horse hitching posts, grow out of this intricately formed soil, as markers of Alas occupancy and sacred festival infrastructure. During the Osohai, participants repeat 7-syllable chants after an improvisational singer, appealing to ancestral landscape spirits, establishing a participatory, reciprocal, embodied relationship with the frozen ground. By contrast, scientific understanding of permafrost relies on deeply extractivist logics, from its discovery by English explorers searching for gold ore, to its earliest Russian records by surtax collectors during Siberian colonization, to contemporary sensing technologies, like seismic profiling works, carving cartographic abstractions into the physical landscape in search for valuable underground deposits, and thermometric boreholes developed from early military supply wells. Imperial and Soviet explorers discovered vast gold, gas, and diamond reserves in the Sakha Republic, triggering a drastic agriculture reform to support the growing extractive industries. Between 1930 and 1960, Sakha livelihoods were devastated by forced sedentarization and mechanization. Land between alases was deforested for arable fields. The Isar festival was displaced from the alas and appropriated by the state. Abandoned since USSR's collapse, these fields are particularly vulnerable to permafrost thaw due to their loss of an insulating forest cover. Thus, upon its gradual return to the alas, contemporary Isar unfolds amidst areas of characteristic hillocks left by thawing ice wedges, dubbed by locals as places where evil spirits have danced. During the state appropriation of the Isar, the Sakha expressed dissent through Osohai appeals. My first proposal draws on this subversive potential to introduce new syncretic festival infrastructures engaging directly with the thawing soilscape. Building on current initiatives to establish a statewide permafrost monitoring system, I propose a network of Sergei sensors deployed across existing intersections of seismic profiling grid lines where their last meadows. These artifacts would hybridize Sakha horse hitching posts with permafrost temperature monitoring boreholes and methane emission sensors, becoming interfaces with the permafrost data commons, giving rural Sakha access to live permafrost degradation data, while simultaneously enabling analog recording of pastoralist climate observations previously excluded from scientific research. Annual data collection and maintenance would turn into a knowledge exchange ritual, while every 10 years the post would be adjusted to account for soil subsidence, marking the physical changes in the landscape. This intervention recognizes horse herding, dancing, and chanting as ways of knowing the changing soilscape. The alas, a workplace, research site, and festival ground, shared by humans and non-humans, defying imposed taxonomic separations. The Yakutsk fortress grew into an imperial expedition base around the time Peter the Great introduced a demi-military parade tradition into Russia. It flourished here due to the disproportionate military involvement of this remote region as a frontline manpower source and logistical node. Today, diamond extractors' headquarters dominate the Yakutsk city center, with their employees dominating the Labor Day workers' procession, a staple in Yakutsk's thriving parade culture. Per Stalin's Stalinist urban policy, Soviet Yakutsk was designed as festival infrastructure, featuring wide avenues for political processions, going through tribune-adorned squares, culminating in a park of culture and leisure, an original Soviet festival typology. Neoclassical facades line procession routes, attempting to conceal the sophisticated engineering required to sustain a city on permafrost. like piles, raising buildings uncannily to just above the frozen ground, floating pipelines along flood management canals, turning Yakutsk into a city with its guts out, and relentless resurfacing of the heaving soil. Together with a standardized, Moscow-issued parade choreography and urban organization, these infrastructures produce an experiential distance between the parade steps and the subarctic soilscape. Procession and infrastructure meet only once. A decorated pipeline gantry forms a new kind of triumphal arch, celebrating the conquest of frozen ground. However, as permafrost thaws, meltwater floods the city, while its sandy, alluvial soil loses capacity to bear heavy loads. Despite attempts to delay the crisis through unregulated backfilling, cracks appear in the city's festival infrastructure, rendering its obfuscating logic unviable. Just like the Oso-High, parades hold subversive potential, channeled, for instance, by the Russian monstration movement, who tag onto the end of state-run Labor Day processions with absurdist slogans. My second intervention draws on this potential to foster a more direct engagement with the thawing permafrost by refurbishing the district heating pipeline, raising it to create a new parade route along religiously future-proofed infrastructure. Precast, post-tension piles with integrated thermobraids would safeguard the pipeline through the thaw, displaying live changes in permafrost temperature to paraders, marching between thermal expansion loops appropriated as sheltered procession stops. Recycling construction waste from thaw-related demolitions as aggregate for the new piles, this hybrid festive infrastructural spine would invert the city's existing spatial hierarchy by exposing key interfaces with the thawing soil. The city's technofix adaptation strategy would be pushed to breaking point, distributing limited resources to selectively protect this infrastructural corridor, letting other areas disintegrate as a sacrifice to the thaw.
Вот эти таяния в последнее время очень сильно наблюдаются. Говорят, в этом году еще сильнее будет таяние из-за того, что зима была теплой. Очень много воды, озера увеличиваются, сенокосные угодья под воду уходят.
State intervention, globalization, and climate change dispossess the Sahel of pastoralist practices through which tacit knowledge of and intricate bonds to the permafrost landscape are developed. The resultant crisis of meaning sparks new festival practices, increasingly appropriating Yakutsk's parade infrastructure. Recently, a group of women on Ordzhonikidze Square encircled policemen in an Oso-High, calling for the return of their sons from Ukrainian front lines. However, in isolation from its biocultural context, Oso-High's mobilizing potential is easily redirected, its state-run form now wielded to promote military campaigns. Thus, the final intervention aims to reconnect Yakutsk's festival with the thawing ground on which they are performed. It subverts two existing proposals: the federally funded refurbishment of Lenin Square into a symbolic alas, with oversized sergei and performance stage, and a plan to extend the city's parade axis into the floodplain, serving proposed reclamation developments designed to reduce flood risk, currently managed by military means. My proposal draws on the floodplain's existing value as functioning hayfield, pasture, and public space on a verdant riverine meadow, fertilized by nutrient-rich floodwater, by extending the parade axis into it without land reclamation towards a new, semi-hardscaped square, inviting the Oso-High as parade culmination and otherwise. Floodwater would circulate freely through the porous gabion base, filled with brick reclaimed from thaw-related demolitions, supporting a heave-friendly dancing surface dissolving into the meadow. The Labor Day parade on May 1st would unfold on a dry, frozen landscape, followed by ice drift and a short flood, before Issaach is celebrated on a luscious green meadow in mid-June. Through seasonal use, flooding would be reconceptualized as a life-giving rather than destructive force, learning from the Sahel to inhabit waterlogged permafrost landscapes rather than filling them in. Together, the three proposed interventions channel radical uncertainty about global warming and permafrost thaw into a productive ambiguity between festival and protest, engaging in the loss of one world while singing another into existence.